You're listening to The Lowdown, a podcast inspired by the creative people in the bass making community. I'm Frankie. I'll be sitting down with bass makers to explore what drives them creatively and to find out what challenges they face in the business of bass. Let's find out what it's all about. Let's get The Lowdown. Hey, welcome again to The Lowdown. As usual, Eric and I are here, and today we were very pleased to have our guest, Marc Ryan. Thank you so much for being here, Marc. We've been looking at some of your stuff, and it's pretty incredible.
To be here.
We were looking at some of your instruments, and if you'd like, I mean, maybe you can tell us how you got your start and that sort of thing. I mean, you make some really beautiful stuff.
So I started 10 or 12 years ago, living in a third floor apartment in Boulder, and started seeing some friends of mine that more extended range bass, but just kind of seeing the laminations in the neck and some of the wood choices they were using and things like that, and just kind of wondered if I could do it. Located a couple places in Denver that were they carried exotic woods, and went out there with the intention of buying enough to build one guitar, and completely overestimated what I would need. And by the time I got home, I had enough to do two basses and then probably another neck worth of wood.
It's really hard to stop buying wood, isn't it?
Yeah. Especially some of it when you find somebody who can get the real crazy stuff.
Yeah,
that's when it gets really hard to put the wall away.
Store it. That's the big part. It takes up so much space too.
Luckily, I had a pretty good size apartment, and it was technically a 3-bedroom, but the third bedroom was essentially a studio without a kitchen, and had an in-unit dry sauna that wasn't functioning. So that was my storage room for all my wood and some of my shop stuff. Set up a workbench back there, and that just became my shop.
Cool.
And then luckily had another guy or met a guy that ran a wood shop that he was able to do. I would basically get everything home and mark everything up how I wanted it, take it to him. He would do all the planing and joining, give it back to me in blanks. I'd get it all laminated together, take that back to him so he could actually get the billets done for me to piece everything together. But then after that, I'm looking at, all the other tools that were needed that I did not have room for or money for. So I did not have a bandsaw. So everything initially was done coping saw or just rough handsaw. Did not have a drill press, but I did have the attachment that you hook onto your corded drill or whatever. And so I was actually going to send you some of those pictures too, of just kind of how crude it was in the beginning, because I would draw the profile of the neck on the side of the billet and then drill 60 or so holes down one side, but it wasn't deep enough to go through the billet. So I had to flip it over and do the other side, and then connect the dots with a coping saw, and then rasp it all smooth. And it was just really crude. Any routing was done with a Dremel and a routing bit.
Man. Yep. Well, I mean, seriously, that makes everything that you've done here even that much more impressive, because you would just assume that you had a whole shop full of tools, and not to mention being in an apartment like that, not even just the room situation, but the noise. Did you have to kind of plan oh geez, I can run this down, I'm not gonna upset
it would
this
be
person
during the days. Yeah. That's during the day when no one's home.
Yeah, during thunderstorms.
I did find out though, that back piece of the apartment was actually on building power, so my power bill never fluctuated at all. So
ooh, hey, bonus.
Was a win. But yeah, other than that, it was files and rasps, and it was brutal. And then it didn't help that I picked 3 of the hardest woods on the planet to start with either. The first 2 that I built,
Wenge probably is one of them, I'm assuming.
There's the one that is all Wenge and Padauk. And then I did another one that was Purple Heart back with a Babinga center and a mahogany top. And then the neck was Purple Heart and Babinga. And all of that. I mean, you're hitting it with, rasps that are just bouncing off the wood because they're not doing anything.
Well, then wenge can just like come off in like erratic chunks sometimes too, depending on, how sharp your knives are and that sort of thing. Like even on joiners and that sort of thing. It's just it can be a nightmare.
Yeah, so the Purple Heart and the Bloodwood, that stuff sands finer than flour, and it didn't matter what I had on for a respirator, I was still breathing dust. And then wenge actually is double. If you get a splinter with wenge, it actually is double sided, so it'll hurt coming out just as much as it does going in.
Like little like harpoons, basically. Yeah, fun times.
And the dust from that actually can cause poisoning, which I found out because I ended up having like a surface rash for a month after I got it on my neck.
That can happen with cocobolo too. Got a friend who like didn't realize that and ended up having like some respiratory stuff working with cocobolo a little bit, a little respiratory infection kind of came and went. Fun times. Yeah, the pitfalls that most people just don't think about, like poisonous wood,
things you weren't, the things
it looks pretty though.
Oh, it sure does. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, I know for me, like I grew up with a grandfather who was a woodworker, and so I was always like around his workshop, and there's just, wood is just so beautiful that you just want to make something with it, so I mean that's why like in some, there's other materials out there, like things like carbon fiber and that sort of thing, and it's cool in its own right, but I personally I can't imagine it being nearly as satisfying as just like dealing with a block of wood. It's just, especially like roasted maple now, I mean it's like working with like maple syrup, it's just a wonderful smelling thing, and it's just beautiful.
What was fun for me was trying to see below my cut. And sometimes when you're looking at the grain, I mean, you can picture what that thing's going to do as you flatten it out more. I love that every piece is different, especially when you get into the real figured stuff or the crazier woods. What even just a natural versus a honey of a stain will do to a natural wood.
Oh yeah. And
how that pops it. I have one that I sent you that was a white hackberry 5-string, and the guy that I built it for wanted it green, and I felt so wrong dyeing that green. It looked good, but at the same time, the hackberry wasn't really the way hackberry was or is. It just kind of splotched a little bit.
Yeah. But it looks great though. It does look great.
It pops with the white. When it was just the white though, it was just so cool looking.
So it's kind of like the green sort of ended up like suppressing some of like the natural light, probably like took some of the depth away to a degree.
But he wanted something that was money, so
they want what they want. Absolutely.
You're paying, I'll make whatever you want as long as it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have a wood hoarding problem. I mean, to the point, like I haven't like really been in the workshop very much, like since like even like 2015, and again with COVID happening, it's been hard. Like my friend who I get to use his workshop, and so distancing's been made it kind of difficult. But I mean, I just keep buying wood. Even though I know I'm going to get to it sometime, but just like you look at these like faces in or whatever, and you just want to get them wet and look at them, and it's just like some of them are just so beautiful. You can just like look at them and just kind of like gaze into them, and it's like you're looking into like another dimension. Sometimes they're just gorgeous. Just love it.
Yeah.
The Babingo centered one I did. I wished I wouldn't have laid that one out that way, because that Babingo was actually really figured, and then it's kind of, you can only really see it a little bit on the guitar. So
yeah,
living to learn.
Yeah, you again, you just really you don't always know what it's going to be like until you lay it out.
So
that was number one.
Yeah,
wow.
And so this is number one.
Impressive number one, man. Wow.
Yeah, and you've come a long way, right? I mean, there's you sent a whole bunch of photos over, and we were sort of flipping through them before the episode, and we hopped on. But there's it's an amazing sort of like progression, right? You want to talk through some of these?
Sure. So this one was I always loved the look of a warrior.
Yeah.
Obviously couldn't afford one at the time. Um, Took a photo of one and a projector and put it on my wall shot it onto some paper
Mm-hmm.
and essentially just kind of rough measured it until it looked about the right size. And then essentially cut my paper apart and made my templates that I needed to off of that.
That's amazing.
But this was, like I said, it was all, clamp it to a bench and start hitting it with a file and go. But that one's a Purple Heart, walnut neck, and then the body is Wenge with Padauk.
Gorgeous. Those are all
So how
good
long did it
choices to
take
take
you
around.
to, like, from start to finish?
Probably 150 hours.
That's pretty cool.
Which is pretty damn impressive considering you had to use a drill that couldn't even make it all the way through the blank and then
That's
do it
what
from
I'm
both sides and
saying.
then coping
Yeah.
saw and filing. I'm just imagining all that.
It was
It's
probably
amazing.
150 coping blades. I mean,
It's amazing you have any
that was
joints
number.
left that still work in your hands and wrists and elbows at this point.
That's awesome.
Yeah, when I got these done, I had issues with my hands and forearms for probably a couple weeks, but this was another one I was building side by side. So this is the one that's the Babinga center. The whole back of it's Purple Heart though.
Beautiful.
But there, and you realize when you're doing especially like a bridge like that, that wood isn't as forgiving as a maple or, something like that. So you drill your normal size hole that you think you're going to need, and you get that screw halfway in, and it just breaks right off. And so this one probably had five screw extracts under that bridge.
That's crazy.
The cool thing is though, like only you know that, which is nice. You
Yeah.
you managed to get past it. That's some of it too. It's just
Yeah, it's sort of been a common theme, I think, for anybody who's been on this, the different episodes, is there's always sort of part of the art is knowing that you sort of messed up somewhere, but you're able to make that correction.
yeah.
And then sort of pull it through on the other side where it's like finished and nobody knows it but you.
And so when I finally did get these done, it's like I said, not having the tools to make this easier on myself.
Mm-hmm.
Not having ever done anything like this before.
It's pretty
And then you realize, oh, I picked the hardest woods to try and work with, and it still came out clean.
Yeah.
Huge sense of accomplishment. I mean,
yeah.
they both played. So that this lacewood one here is version 2 of the Padauk Wenge one. So this one, I learned my lesson on it. So maple, walnut neck, and then mahogany and Australian lacewood body.
It's too bad you didn't pick some nice looking maple to use. You just went with that plain looking maple. That's a real shame.
It has some tiger, it has some flame in it.
No, I'm just joking. It's beautiful flame. So with lots of flame. I'm a little bit sarcastic.
This one here, that one there, I did do another revision on it. I ended up changing the front pickup on it to a humbucker, but that's one that I wish I would have kept, because after a few years, I was able to actually play a warrior. I actually liked that bass better than I did the warrior.
Yeah.
But,
well, and to be totally honest with you, I mean, again, it's photos, but if I couldn't see a headstock logo, I would just assume I'm looking at warriors. I mean that's how well made these look to me.
That's the final version of it right there.
That's cool. That's really cool. It's gorgeous. So, we talked a little bit about like sort of what got you started. I mean, there's sort of a leap that you have to make, right? From playing. And then, like we talk to a lot of people, I think every day where, and especially Frankie does, where, you have people that we're talking to that really have just like sort of felt inspired by somebody's build, or, they're looking at different designs and they're like, I think I can do that. Right. But there's a huge sort of thought chasm, between being there, like, I think I can do that, and actually going out and doing it. So what sort of got you over that hump?
So I will say the two bases that I think inspired me the most, and I'm gonna probably butcher both of their names because they, just but Gene Bodine had a 9-string Pac-Man Conklin,
Oh, I've
which
seen
I
that
thought
base. Yeah, I've seen that.
was cool. And then he had the Samurai that he got made. And then a guy in France was JP Bases. I think it was John Pierre. He had some real beautiful stuff, but that's kind of what sparked me into, wanting to do it. The other side of it is I have the way my mentality is, if I'm going to try anything, and I'm either going to be good at it or good enough to, for my own standards, or I'm going to realize that I don't want to ever do it again.
Right.
But I'm at least going to try it.
Yeah.
And power's coming back on. Good. And this was one that I think I had enough, it's so close. Or this piece I got almost there, but I can't really get it to where I want it without ruining it. Mm-hmm. So let's try it on the next piece and kind of just did it that way.
Mm-hmm.
That can be hard.
That kind of what got me.
Knowing what you're like, really being able to perceive what your limitations really are, and try to stay within those bounds, but yet still try to push it where you can without ruining something. I mean, that's discipline, for sure.
Well, it's self-awareness too, right?
Very much.
And I think that makes you better at most things in life, right? Is if you know where the boundaries are, and then where are the areas that you need to push or educate yourself on to be able to sort of make that jump, make yourself better. And this is cool. I mean, I think that's the, so when we were talking about you ahead of time, Mark, that was one of the things that stuck out to me, just with the emails that were going back and forth, and as we were maybe prepping a little bit, is there are very, very few people that actually sort of make that jump, right? They'll take it to somebody down the street, or somebody they know, or they'll take it to they'll want that, but then they'll not very many people actually do it. So I think, anybody that's listening to this, there's some inspiration that sort of comes out of that, right? Is the fact that, you're doing it, you did it,
Mm-hmm.
and the stuff looks awesome, and, it's possible. And, it takes a lot of, some dedication and, a lot of stick-to-itiveness, right? But there's I don't know if you can describe it very easily, but the sort of fulfillment that you get on the other side of a project is just, sort of second to none, right?
That was my I don't know if I want to say credo or whatever, but my, growing up, I didn't really care how much money I made or what I was really doing. It's just at the end of the day, I wanted that sense of accomplishment.
That's great.
And, that to me is worth more than anything. And it's, if anything, I have a skill that I didn't have before. Like I said, running into some of the issues that I did run into, screw tolerances and where to set. I mean, they're all neck throughs. So trying to figure out where that fretboard needed to be before I glued that body together. Things like that. And talking to, Brian Ursola and Jesse Hall, they, at least, yes, you can do this. It's not, this problem isn't unsurmountable. truck through it, learn from your mistake, next one, make it better. And, that lace one, I don't remember anything going awry on that one. Granted it's different woods and stuff, but learned my lesson on the first one and applied it to the second one and made it better. And then just kind of did that for everything else.
So I think it's interesting. Like this episode is different than, when we're interviewing you, I sort of just like one of the things that I've noticed is, you're not necessarily, full-time business, right? Where you're trying to turn this into, a brand, that you're going to replicate or scale up. What you're doing is what I think the majority of our customers do, right? Which is, just you're doing this because you love it, and you're doing this, because there's a, you love seeing the final product, and if you could do that, it's like sort of like time well spent, right?
Or you look at somebody's $8,000 base and you don't have $8,000, but can you make one for?
Yeah, there's practical reasons too.
You make one for a fraction of that cost.
Yeah, no, there's practical reasons too. I mean, but you can also, like, even if you're doing that, you can make it your own, right? You put your own stamp on it. You make it your own. I mean, are you doing that like are you doing it to make money too, or like sort of on the side, or is this like that's a benefit, but that's not necessarily why I'm doing it? Like, what's the?
I originally just did it to see if I could do it.
Yeah.
And then had a couple people, hit me up and, hey, can you build me a body? Or, hey, can you, do this? Or I want a 5-string fretless green, and so it just kind of went like that. I did have an LLC for a while. Haven't decided if I'm going to fire that back up yet.
Are these people that you knew that were approaching you, or did they find you somewhere else?
I post a picture on a base forum or on, MySpace back in, 20 years ago, back in MySpace days. And somebody would see it and hit me up. Okay. And just kind of went that way. Okay. I knew a buddy that had a 29 F model 8-string mandolin, and he wanted a 5-string E-Mando.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to be able to solo Van Halen on it, because that was his jam. So I've got that sitting in the back being put together here and there, but it's a 18 and 5/8 scale, 29 fret. So I mean, your finger covers 5 frets up at the top. It's crazy. But
you got the whole F style scroll and the whole bit.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're probably doing all that with chisels and that sort of thing. So
that one the scroll I ended up having to do with like a triangle bit on a Dremel. But yeah, scrolling a solid body.
Yeah.
And then the input jack actually goes into the little tail on the back end of the.
I'd love to see that when it's done.
Yeah, you definitely need to send that over just to look at it from the pictures. We can pop that up there on the blog too. It's interesting. I talk to people. There's also sort of like the raw cost of it. That's sort of like a barrier to people, getting started doing something like this. I mean, what's a ballpark figure, when you're thinking about, like, let's say you harvest the wood yourself, or you find a good piece, somewhere. Like, what is
I can tell you the first two that I did, including wood, was under 1,500 for everything. And that's Hipshot ultralights, that's Bartolini pickups, Bartolini preamp.
So you got like good electronics in there. You've got okay.
So, Hipshot brass bridges.
Definitely recognize all those parts.
Yeah. so I'll say somebody should, because I'm pretty sure they came from your warehouse.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I think just the, like, anything that's under anything that's like that kind of quality that's under, you know, $1,500. I mean, how do you sort of go wrong with that, right?
Well,
I mean, the wood itself was, I think when I went up there, and like I said, I got more than two bases worth of wood, and I don't think I spent much over $200.
That's awesome.
this is probably a question I kind of like asked everybody, seemingly, I think on every podcast that we do, and Eric will probably agree once I ask a question. But what that being said, once you get all the materials worked out, what price do you put on your time, and how do you figure out, what your time is worth to you to be able to put a number on that? Like, what's 150 hours of, especially of drilling a body blank and coping saw and everything you had to do to be creative like that and do it with very few tools.
Almost poisoned yourself.
Yeah. It just kind of depended. How much pain it gave me, things like that.
What is your neck skin worth, Mark?
I know, right? No, it was anywhere from 12 to 17 is kind of where I landed. By the time you didn't make much. And that's the one thing I can say is, unless you've got a shop of CNC mills and things that are, duplicators and things like that, if you're hand cutting everything,
pretty damn hard. Yeah.
You're not going to get, you'd have to get paid 10 grand to make it worth your while.
Oh.
Yeah.
But, seeing a couple of mine hanging in a guitar shop in little town in Colorado, or seeing that green fretless, up on a stage in front of, 600 people, that to me was that's cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
So
go ahead.
I was gonna say, so you said you had an LLC, and you said maybe I'll fire that back up. I mean, is that sort of in your future, or are you thinking?
Right. Well, right now I ended up getting divorced last year, sold the house, so I don't really have the shop anymore. So planning on getting another house this summer. I just moved to an apartment over the winter.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so kind of keeping busy, just doing repairs, or somebody's got a base that they haven't touched in 5 years and want it cleaned and set up and things like that. Been doing a lot of just play along videos on YouTube for COVID therapy, but so we'll see where it goes.
People doing that.
The one thing I do think is, and I totally admire these guys, but there's a group on Facebook for small base builders. And these guys do some layering that I have to sit there and look at for an hour just to try and figure out how they glued everything together to make it layer the way they did.
Oh, wow. I'll have to check that out.
You've got layering as the neck's getting cut. You've got step layering in there, but then you've also got pins going, and amazes me what these guys are doing. So if I do fire it back up, it's going to be, probably the stuff like you see there, where it's just kind of more of the simple stuff for now, or I'm going to have to really step up the layering game.
It's part of the fun of it, though, right? Especially like you were saying, like, the customer comes to you, they want a certain thing, so now you have to, kind of figure out what that is and agree on it. And now you got to figure out how it's going to be constructed and what it's going to be constructed of. And you have to kind of work out a game plan,
or you have the mindset of your sense of accomplishment wins all. Okay, well, that's an accomplishment, so get after it.
Yeah, I think if you have anything in this life that is hard to do, and as it challenges you, and you actually find yourself like, doing well at it, you want to do it again. That's really saying something, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool.
Yeah. So, but lately it's just been, I wanted a Rickenbacker, haven't had or didn't want to spend the money on a Rickenbacker, so I just made my own clone. Did a white Jaguar base to match a Hagstrom that I have, so I have like kind of a matching ghost set for this little ghost thing that I'm doing. yeah, like I said, just kind of doing repairs here and there. You know, somebody needs something done, I'm the guy they call to take their stuff to get it fixed.
Who are you gonna call? Mark Ryan.
Yeah, exactly. Which is sometimes a blessing and sometimes a curse.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But yeah, I probably will once I get back. I still haven't, you know, gotten rid of any of my templates, and everything's still sitting nice and neat and ready to go. I'm actually doing wanted to do kind of a tribute base to 70s jazz. So I've got a satin avocado green jazz base I'm building that's going to be a vintage neck and a double pick or a double J bridge.
Cool.
But yeah, just white inlays on a maple neck, and
Nice.
like that color green that your grandma's fridge was.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I know exactly, you know, but you say that and I know exactly what that, like, I have that picture.
Well, yeah, you had avocado green, you had was it sunset orange, I think is what they called it, and then there was the yellow.
Yep. That's awesome.
Tupperware colors.
God, we had a fridge that was like this. It was like almost like a two-tone brown sunburst, but it was just brown. You know, it was just like two different kinds of brown. You know, it was just kind of like, I don't know who came up with the idea of like, hey, let's fade some brown color. That'll be great. You know, it's just, you know, wasn't
brown.
good.
That's
Give me
awesome.
the avocado green, right?
I remember seeing station wagons with
Oh,
two-tone
the
brown.
fake wood, yeah.
Yep.
And
That's awesome.
like the Griswold station wagon, like, you know, green and the fake wood and two tones of fake wood usually. Yeah.
Kind of going back to what we were talking about, you know, about looking at wood too, is, you know, the even the body shape and the style of base. You know, I think you look at the wood and, you know, yeah, this should be more of a exotic modern looking base, you know, or maybe you want a P base that's completely burled, you know, a burled walnut or something like that, and nobody's making one because they're all making ash or
Right.
you know, all their bodies. And it's like, okay, well, make your own P base. But yeah, like I said, some of them you can look at them and just be like, okay, that's a good kind of straightforward P base, J base style, or oh, this one should be something crazy, you know.
Well, totally. It's like the, you know, the lines of the wood. It kind of it has to be something that's going to be kind of work in concert with the lines of the base itself. You know, if you know, obviously if it has a certain motion to it. I mean, if I'm, you know, that's how I kind of see it. Like you almost like see the wood, and you kind of get an idea of what's going to work with it right away. Where like it's so beautiful. I want to make this like as big as I can. So I want to use all the wood. You know, like, you know, I don't want to lose any of it. You know, it's gonna be, you know, that sort of thing.
But you do get to play your own chef, so to speak. So I had
very much the way of saying it.
Had a really heavy figured Cocobolo fretboard, and I was going to use it on whatever base it was. Going to put it on a base, but when I laid it up there just for mock-up, there was so much figuring in the body that I almost thought it took away from the body, or it made it too much.
Too busy. Yeah.
And so when I had one that was at a Palfero board that was close to the same tone that I wanted, but didn't have as much grain in it, so to speak. Ended up using that, and I was glad I did. But yeah, that's kind of the nice thing about it is, you know, you go to a wood store and they've got, you know, here's your big section of Purple Heart, and you just spend a couple hours going through each board trying to find that one set of 2-foot grain that is going to be perfect for your body.
Yeah, there's worse ways to spend a Saturday afternoon than at the hardwood store. That's safe to say. So bring your gloves.
When you go there,
don't want to get.
Then you go there enough, and they're like, "Let me take you downstairs where the other stash is."
Oh yeah,
and it's closed off to the public, and you get to go downstairs, and it's like just racks and racks of stuff you've never even heard of, let alone seen.
Yeah.
That's when I knew I made it big.
So all the stuff they can't bear to see made into cutting boards or kitchen cabinets, you know, somebody has to make something special with this. We'll hide it away.
That's right.
Wait for the right customer. Right. Absolutely.
It depends.
So which of these have you kept? That's what I'm curious about. Like which of these bases did you decide like this one's mine?
I have none of them.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's It's
I mean, it's good for me because I sold everything.
fair enough. Yeah. Boy,
But like I said, that Lacewood Warrior clone that I did, that was by far my favorite.
yeah, that's gorgeous.
It's cool.
There's a 7-string, a single pickup 7-string guitar that I did that was probably the most fun guitar I think I've played in a while. But that was built for somebody, so I had to let that one go.
Uh, uh, when you do get your house, you be planning on having a little workshop space and getting right back to it.
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
That's
You're
cool.
gonna allow yourself some more tools. You're gonna. I mean, just my own personal opinion. I mean, you might want to consider, maybe adding some power to some things just to, like, again, just to save your limbs. I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah.
you
No,
don't want to have
there's
so much arthritis that you can't play anymore.
I did end up
travesty.
getting a little bandsaw at one point, and it wasn't enough to.
Yeah.
I didn't have enough throw to cut through sideways on the neck,
Yeah.
but I could at least cut the bulk of the bodies out and get them closer to where I needed them. So that definitely helped a lot. But
Save you some hand and arm
yeah,
Yeah.
I can
mileage.
tell you how many Dremel brushes I've burned up over the years, and
That's amazing.
actually doing those necks with the little handheld drill press, I ended up going through 2 corded drills. Couldn't do cordless because you just burn the batteries out in 30 seconds and then you're done.
That's very long.
But drilling through Wenge and Purple Heart drills don't really like that very much.
How many Brad point bits have you broken?
Enough that I've probably got 10 different sets of boring bits and everything that are all missing one here and there.
Yeah, that's what happens. Happens. It's unavoidable.
But no, it's the wood. Like I said, the wood for both guitars was about the same price as a decent pickup set, or a price of a single preamp.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not the cost. The cost is your time, and the cost is
Definitely.
Yep.
the rest of the hardware for sure.
Yep.
But I just, it was a huge thing for me when I was able to do it. They played. I had people that actually liked them and wanted to pay me to build them.
Yep.
Had a music store that actually wanted to let me hang them up and broker them for me, so to speak. See them playing on stage.
I think that's the real payoff, right? I mean, and plus, if you can make some money doing it, that's, it's sort of the bonus on top of it. I don't think anybody, at least on a smaller scale, is in it purely for business purposes, right? Everybody, that we've interviewed anyway, all but one or two, maybe two, come to think of it, episodes, are people that are, they have a day job, they're working that day job, and then this is what they love to do. This is just part of their passion. And and then they can also, make money on the side. But I think, but two of them have actually been, that's their full-time thing. They've been able to afford, a staff, or building up a staff of folks, to be able to do it at scale, which has been really fun to see. So it's fun to me to be able to just talk to people like you, because we've seen, the entire sort of spectrum of, people that are just starting out, to people that are, they've got a brand and a label, that people are calling them, about, and they're doing it, in more of a scale, format, where, like you were talking about earlier. And, just sort of seeing the entire, like, running the whole gamut of, of people. So it's just been fun to do that. And I, definitely appreciate your taking the time with us too. I know this is probably not what you necessarily thought you were going to do at, 6:00 on a Thursday, but, we love, I don't know, maybe I'm just putting words in Frankie's mouth here, but, I think we just love having these kinds of conversations, because, the context that we typically talk to people, is really, somebody's calling in and saying, hey, I'd really like to like, I'm looking for this, or do you have that, or whatever. And, you know, rarely, not always. I mean, sometimes we get photos of people with the finished product, you know, sort of emailing in photos, which is awesome to see, you know, but rarely do we get to have an hour-long conversation with somebody that, you know, is sort of talking through what they're doing. And so it's been fun doing that.
Eventually we'll get to talk to everyone.
Eventually, yes, we're gonna work our way through. That's right.
That's right.
Well, I'd say too, for anybody that's like hesitant about, you know, taking on a full custom build themselves. I mean, look on, you know, the Reverbs and the eBays of the world, and look for things that are broken.
Yeah.
Indeed. All right, great.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've got a $1,000. Somebody coming up the door. You know, I got a $1,000 Hagstrom in there that I picked up for $150 because it had a broken glue joint in the neck. And okay, can I fix that? If not, it's $100, but it's, you know, I can still hang it on the wall. It's just the back of the neck's broken. Ended up fixing it
regardless, right?
Yeah, learning experience. Don't know what Hagstrom uses for their finishes, but I ended up having to dye epoxy instead of painting it. But there again, you know, I've never done that kind of repair. Can I do it? And it's sitting in there, and probably one of the best guitars I have to play.
That's awesome.
You know, so trying things like that. I mean, there's nothing's insurmountable.
I think that's great advice too. Like, if you want to like have a low risk project, right? You know, starting out, you get a low risk project that isn't going to cost you a ton of money, and you know, is something that you can sort of play around on and experiment on and learn on, is invaluable, really. So that's
pick up a cheap P-base copy and sand the paint off of it, or maybe it's already beat up, and sand it down, strip it down, buy some new electronics, practice your soldering, and make the body what you want it, make it something different.
Thank you so much. We're super excited. Frankie and I are working really hard on putting these things together and giving you lots of interviews just like this one. We just need to get some love out there in order to get this podcast surfaced. And thanks for listening.